to each of the panelists that are here are currently in their master's or doctorate program, and so what this panel is meant to do is not only to encourage you to pursue a higher degree, but it's also to give you some insights to the challenges and some of the barriers that come along with graduate level studies. And so it's a way to better prepare yourself for that higher degree that you're hopefully willing and planning on going for. So the facilitator for this panel is Summer Manakia. She's one of Liwae's graduate doctoral scholars. She can give a brief intro about herself, but her and one other scholar, Lehua, they are planning this graduate panel and the Hoike as their projects, as their leadership projects for Liwae. So I turn it over to you.
Hi, hello, my co-host, Summer Manakia. I'm from Waipahu, and I work here at Kanewai at the Loi, and I'm part of the College of Education. So I'm in my final semester of coursework for the PhD program, and then I'll be moving on to my proposal, comps, and conducting my research. So I'd say 2 more years. Really grateful you guys are all here. We were all in your position once, and I wish I had a panel of grad students to encourage me. I was kind of lost in the process at the beginning, so I'm really happy that you guys are here. So I guess we can get started. First of all, mahalo you guys for taking your Saturday morning out to be with us today. Really grateful that you're here. And so if we could just get started by, maybe we'll start on the end and move to this way, introducing yourself, where you are from, the degrees that you received prior to your master's or PhD program, and then what school or what are you pursuing now, the degree you're pursuing, and where. That's a lot. So name, where you are from, the degrees that you got previous to being in a master's or PhD, and then what school you're at and what you're studying.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Wilson. I'm from the island of Kauai. I got my bachelor's in public relations and advertising, but now I'm currently studying marriage and family counseling to get a master's of science in counseling from Chaminade University.
My name is Lucas Moy. I hail from the Rocky Mountain area, that's Colorado. I have my bachelor's in political science from UH Hilo. I have my master's in social work with the child and family concentration and an emphasis in Hawaiian culture from UH Manoa. And I'm currently working on my doctorate in education with a specialization in higher educational leadership through Walden University.
I'm Jamaica, hail to Lenny Osorio. I'm from Palola Valley, which is the next valley. When I'm inside, I can't tell the direction, but the next valley over from here. I graduated with an honors bachelor's in comparative studies in race and ethnicity at the University of Stanford in 2012, and then in 2013 I graduated from New York University with a master's in arts and politics, which is a fancy way of saying art and like activism. And then I'm a first year English PhD candidate at the University of Hawaii, studying Mo'olelo, mostly actually in the Hawaiian language, but there's no Hawaiian studies PhD, so I'm in the English department.
My name is Rebecca Soon, and I was born and raised here on Oahu, Hawaii, now live in Hawaii Kai. I got my undergraduate degree from a college called Babson College in Massachusetts, and there I got a graduate in business administration, and I specialize my coursework in business law and in social entrepreneurship, which is basically like how can we do good stuff and make money at the same time. I moved home right after undergrad 7 years ago, and I just started my first year at UH Richardson School of Law down the road, and I'm pursuing a law degree. Who knows what will happen after that.
Hello, my name is Errol Kia'ili, and I'm from Wai'iwi, Waianae, and I still live in Waianae. I wanted to say I got my associates. I'm going to share that because I got that in '94 from Honolulu Community College in electrical science. Took a 13-year break, then went back to school to get my bachelor's in social work. And then went straight into the graduate program, got advanced standing, and so I have another year left before I graduate with my master's in social work.
So the next question is, what made you decide to go to grad school, and how did you select the degree or your field of study, your program? How did you select your program? we'll switch it up.
No, I can start. I actually went to get my bachelor's right out of high school because that was the time where all the scholarships were being offered. Majority of scholarships come to graduating high school seniors. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that my parents couldn't pay for college, so I had to get scholarships in order to go. So I started getting all these scholarships, and I didn't want to turn them down. And particularly, I got a scholarship from Hawaii Pacific University. So, I was gonna basically get a free ride. So I went even if I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up doing communications, public relations, because I knew that, I wanted to help people, but I just didn't know how. And then at the very end, the last semester, right before I graduated, I had one kind of like a communication theory class, but it was like sort of like a basic psychology course. And then the light bulb kind of went on that I actually was really interested in psychology. Then I was like, oh crap, I'm already graduated, I cannot change my major now. So I was like, oh well, I'm just gonna go home after I graduate because I don't wanna just rush into a degree in psychology as a graduate student and not be 100%, because I already got a public relations degree and I wasn't 100%. So I went home. I took about a 6-year break between my bachelor's and my graduate, and just kind of did a bunch of different jobs. And then my longest job, most recently, is a substitute teacher. And then while being a substitute teacher, I still found that I was really drawn to not really in the classroom setting teaching the kids, but helping the kids with their issues and being someone they could come and talk to. So my passion for psychology and counseling just kind of snowballed, and I decided that going back to get my graduate degree was the only way I would be able to be a real counselor. So then I just had to make a move. So that's how I got into graduate studies.
For me, I was kind of bouncing around between potential jobs. So when I originally started my college career, I was very adamant about becoming a lawyer. And then as I progressed throughout my undergrad, I realized I wanted to work with families. But family law is more about divorce, custody, and probation than it is about rehabilitation with the families or reconciliation with the families. So I decided I actually decided my fall semester of my senior year that I wanted to go to grad school and work on my master's in social work, because that's with families. So I got into the program for the Master's of Social Work. I went through that program, and then I realized that I can't do social work as my main job, because with social work you burn out really fast. It takes someone with special abilities to really do social work, because you're handling a number of cases on top of trying to manage your own life and not burn out. So I fell into higher education. I have two amazing role models. First is my grandfather, who pursued his master's full-time while raising a family of 7 while training for the Olympics. So, I mean, if he could could do it, I really have no excuses as to why I would fail. Right? Yeah. That's not a high standard, you know. But, so, and then my other role model is the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at UH Hilo, Dr. Lolo Hall. She is a very progressive leader and I loved working for her. And I was recruited by her to work at UH Hilo. So I was there for a year after I graduated with my master's. And I absolutely loved higher education. I loved the first year experience and being able to teach students and helping them with their transition to college demands. But one thing I noticed about higher education, and this is just me, so for me it seemed like a lot of departments and programs were more concerned about outcomes and data than they were about the students. And so I wanted to make a difference where the department, the program, the institution was more focused on what the student needs are. And so I decided to pursue my doctorate in education, again, somewhat last minute, so, so that I could make a difference with the communities and the students that I work with. Originally, after my master's, I was going to give myself a 3-year break. I ended up giving myself 1.5, I think, and then I decided that it was time for me to go back. So I am now back in school.
I pretty much always knew from a young age that I'd end up in some kind of, that I was going to end up in college and then in some kind of graduate program, mostly because I grew up around my father, who was here when this building was built, and when Hawaiian Studies began, and I saw the kind of advent of the Hawaiian Studies Master's program and the discussions to talk about a PhD program. So I kind of always knew that I kind of wanted to follow my father, get an undergraduate degree, probably get a master's in Hawaiian Studies, and then probably go to law school. And then a lot of things changed along the way. As I was graduating from Stanford, I got into the master's program here, but I also got into a 1-year master's program in New York and decided I wasn't quite done in Hawaii yet. I mean, on the continent yet. So I went on to New York, found that I didn't really like New York that much, but it was an interesting experience. And at that point, I was really kind of juggling whether or not I was going to go to law school in Hawaii or New York, or come back and do the English program at UH. And I was really lucky. My father really didn't want me to go to law school. He thought that I would be really unhappy. And I grew up with this kind of romanticized idea of what I could do with a law degree. Growing up in the Hawaiian sovereignty movement, I thought I could fix everything if I just understood the law better, which is really not very realistic. And so I was thinking more about what kind of program would cultivate me as a thinker, as a learner, as a Hawaiian. And my father and my writing mentor from when I was a kid, Liz Soto, who's in the English department now, kind of forced me to go talk to some people at the English department. And honestly, I'm not that fond of the English language. And I grew up, this is because I grew up in a Hawaiian immersion school and never felt completely comfortable writing in English. So I never would have, the idea that I'm in an English PhD program is kind of baffling. Anytime I tell someone who's known me for a long time that I'm in an English program, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. You can barely spell, which is true, you can barely spell. But I found that there are these amazing people in the English department who were digging up Hawaiian mo'olelo. And these were Hawaiian scholars in an English department. They weren't, and yeah, they strive, they thrive in this English department as well, but they're also really Hawaiian scholars. And so then I got super excited about being surrounded by Hawaiian scholars and being a part of a department that's rapidly changing and becoming more and more brown and more about ike and kupuna and less about what you would imagine an English department would be about. And so I ended up there. To be honest, I'd probably be here if there was a PhD program in Hawaiian Studies, but for right now I'm pretty happy with where I am, and it's been an interesting kind of wild ride to get here. Yeah.
My story is a little bit of one of those I always dreamed I would go to law school type stories, which seems like a really silly dream, but no, there's some things in common. So when I was young, when I was a little kid, I always thought that I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice when I grew up. I don't know where that came from, but that's kind of what I wanted. And I got into a fantastic entrepreneurship program, which is not on the path to becoming a Supreme Court justice. And then I came home to Hawaii and I found some really amazing nonprofits to work with that I got immersed in for a little while. Again, not on the path to becoming a Supreme Court justice. And then I started my own business and started getting really wrapped up in trying to find clients that did the type of work that I was really interested in, which again, not the path to becoming a Supreme Court justice. So I sort of found myself away from this path. And my parents knew, my parents are also huge role models for me. They really raised me in this setting of, one, academia being very important, but also just following your passions and taking risks. And so even though it seemed virtually impossible to kind of close down my business and close down the work that I was doing, that I was so passionate about, and go to law school, they sort of encouraged me to do that. And really as a vehicle to do the work that I do better. I no longer want to become Supreme Court justice. I respect them greatly, but I'm no longer on the path. And I don't actually think I want to be a lawyer either, interestingly, which people think I'm crazy for being in law school and not wanting to practice law. But really, I'm just not that interested in practicing law. What I am interested in is the tools and the vehicles to do more exciting things for our community. So the nonprofits that I worked with when I came home, and the work that I did through our small business, which I still do, is very centered on figuring out how to make mission and profit not be mutually exclusive. So how to make businesses be more interested in having a community-based mission, and how to have community-based missions be more sustainable. And I'm not so interested necessarily in any particular cause or mission. I just believe that any cause or mission that supports our community's interests is worth fighting for and is worth supporting. So I'm happy to help be the backbone to create the infrastructure that allows people with really awesome passions in various areas to move forward and to focus on that work, and I can worry about the backbone. So that's kind of where my little area of interest is, and I sort of see being in law school as a tool to support that work. Like another tool in like the toolkit that I can pull out and be like, oh, do we need business support today? Okay, here's my undergrad stuff. Do we need law support stuff today? Okay, there's this. So that's kind of how I got here. And I did meet a Supreme Court justice here. Probably not my favorite one, but still a great honor to meet them. Sorry.
Before I give my answer, I was just wondering, how many of you here are social work majors right now? Anyone thinking about majoring in social work in graduate school eventually? No? Okay. I'm not going to try and market that too much. But my decision to go to graduate school is not as profound as the decision I made to go back to get my undergraduate degree. The reason is because, like I said before, actually my career, I had a career as an electrician. My parents thought I was crazy to give up that career to go into nonprofit work. And the thing is, like, while I was an electrician, I did volunteer work for the Community Legal County Children's Center. That was my first experience with nonprofit work and being engaged in the community. And that was as an adult, as a child. I wasn't raised, around this arena, of like sovereignty or community, programming or just doing stuff in a lawyer like many, young Hawaiians are doing today. My family is like very colonized, and so I grew up with a different frame of thinking about, the world around me. And it wasn't until after I graduated from Kamehameha, I started asking myself, okay, what is my purpose? How can I become more Hawaiian? How can I, get involved in my community? And so when I did volunteer work at QLCC, I found like there was a part of me that I have always been looking for, and I felt like that was my passion. So that was really profound, and that inspired me to want to learn more, or eventually go back to school. And I knew I was going back to school eventually, I just didn't know when or how. So I remained in the workforce for 8 years after I left my career as an electrician, and then I was working for a nonprofit called Partners in Development Foundation, and I was running a parent-teacher, or actually a parenting class for parents of children who are, homeless, and it was a traveling preschool basically, and I was doing goal setting with the parents, and a lot of them were telling me that their main goal was to go back to school and get their degree, and they inspired me to actually go back to college. And once I made that decision to go back to college, going to get my master's degree was automatic, So the hardest part was just getting back to college again and starting over, and once I finally went to college, then everything else just started like falling into place. I didn't even know I was going to major in social work. Actually, I was being encouraged to get my degree in family resources. The people that I worked with at PID, a lot of them had their degrees in family resources, and it was like a fast track, program to get your, bachelor's degree. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll follow these footsteps. But like, I ended up taking a detour after my first year of taking liberal arts at LCC. I actually went to the Wine and Health Academy to get a certificate in public health. And one of my professors in that program found out that I was going to major in family resources. She's like, no. Like, I encourage you to, try and get your degree in social work. And she knew what was on my heart, and she saw my potential. And that's the neat thing too. Like, I was meeting people who eventually became my mentors. They were people that I aspired to be like, and they saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself at the time. And they encouraged me, and they kind of like guided me to where I'm at today, and I wouldn't have to be here if it wasn't for them. So, yeah, eventually I declared social work as my major. I transferred from LCC to UH Manoa, and that's kind of like everything else is. It was like the momentum. I was at the moment I didn't want to stop, but it was like I said, automatic. After getting my bachelor's degree, I knew I was going to go into the graduate program.
So about the application process to get into grad school, how competitive was the process to get into your program? And then what was the most challenging part about the application process? I guess we can start this way.
I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, as a student in a bachelor's program of social work, what they do is encourage the students to go into graduate school. And the neat thing about being in a bachelor's program, we can be qualified for advanced placement in the master's program. What that means is we bypass the foundation year, because typically the MSW program is a 2-year program. A lot of people come into the MSW program from other majors like psychology, education, some of them come from nursing. But for students who graduate from the BSW program can qualify for advanced placement, which means you take less credits and you can graduate in 1 year. And fortunately, for me, that was a challenge because I needed to maintain like no lower than a B- for all my classes. I couldn't get lower than a B-. If I did, if I had got a C+, then I would like have to retake that class, and that would disqualify me from getting into the advanced standing program. In addition to that, another challenge was I was developing such a big network of people who were supporting me that I had a hard time choosing a minimum of 3 letters of recommendation. They won't accept more than 3. So I went through like this challenge about who am I going to choose? How can I tell somebody like, oh, can you, write me a letter of recommendation, and when they don't follow through with it, and I ask somebody else, and then they write it as a backup plan, and without telling them, well, you know what, I'm not going to use your letter of recommendation because my first choice actually came through,
That's
so,
a good problem.
yeah. It's a good problem, but I went through, weeks of embarrassment because, I had like 5 at first, and they were all good, but I had to narrow it down to 3, and all of them were like, yeah, we understand, and they all knew each other too, so and it's funny because they were like, no, use him, I don't want to, don't use my letter of recommendation like that, so it made it a lot easier on me, and so that was my challenge.
I want to build on the letter recommendation thing. You got to take their timeline seriously because you have to be respectful to the people that you're asking to write recommendations and give them time. And then people are human, so sometimes they're going to take a little longer. And sometimes they're going to maybe forget to send it in, or there's all kinds of potential things that can happen. So give them extra time, give them as much time as possible, stay on them, follow up respectfully, follow up with them, hey, what's going on with this letter, et cetera, can I help you somehow, can I send it in for you, if that's permissible. But take that process seriously and really be respectful of the people that you're asking of their time.
And sorry, just to build off of that, like more specifically, like you would probably want to give them like as courtesy, like 4 to 6 weeks advance notice from when you want it to be in, not when it's due, kind of thing. So that way you know the items are going to be in. Because if the letter is due on the 21st of the month, and then you're giving them 4 to 6 weeks from there, that is still ample time for them, but then they still have time to edit it, and then if you have to send it in, or if you can like get it and send it in, it gives you a lot more wiggle room than when it's supposed to be.
Also think seriously about who you want letters of recommendation from. So you may not want it to be heavily at all professors or all mentors or all etc. You might think about the people that can speak differently about the things that you want highlighted. Especially, you might think really critically about where the weakness is in your package. So just be really honest, like, oh, my GPA is not great, or oh, I didn't do so hot in these types of classes, or I don't have a lot of work experience. And you kind of want to, for me at least, it was advantageous to utilize my letters of recommendation to help sort of tell the story of why those weaknesses weren't really weaknesses, or help tell the story that your resume and your scores don't tell about you. Helps to really flesh it out. So think really seriously about the letter of recommendation process. Don't be afraid to ask somebody that you maybe aren't like super buddy-buddy with. Don't be afraid to ask people that maybe are teachers or people that that maybe you're not sure how critical they're going to be of you, but have a conversation with them to see, because they may have a different lens to talk about you through than other things. So that's not what your question is, though. Your question was about the competitiveness of the program that I'm in.
That's a great answer.
That was actually my fault.
No, I just want to build on it, because that for me, in terms of the application process, the letters of recommendation was also one of the most difficult processes. So I just wanted to add on to that. In terms of the competitiveness overall of the program, I think UH Richardson School of Law lets in around 20% of applicants. All graduate programs have some degree of competitiveness. I think that you need to do your research about what tier of school you can reasonably expect to get into. Don't be afraid to have some reach schools. Don't be afraid to have some safe schools. Have an idea of, if you have an ideal school that you want to get into, make sure you totally understand what they look for in their applicants. Every school is a little different in what they look for in their applicants.
Okay, yeah, so I actually don't know how competitive the English program at the University of Hawaii is. I know that there are like 7 people in my cohort, which is the group of people who are admitted in my year. I know that only 5 of us got money from the school itself, got what they call it getting funded. But I don't know how many people applied. I do know that on a PhD level, especially in the English department, and all my conversations with people is that if you are prepared and they're interested in you, then they're going to make room for you, right? So if you're going to succeed in their program and you're going to do something interesting in their program, they're going to want you. And that's really, I think, what I mostly had to think about when applying to the school. I also want to kind of piggyback on this idea of reach schools. When I applied to the when I applied to Stanford University, that was a school. It was, first of all, I applied early, so it ended up being the only school I applied to. But it was a school I wasn't supposed to get into. I was placed in remedial English my freshman year at Kamehameha, and they tried to make me take like effective reading classes. So basically, they told me I was couldn't read, and I was an interesting candidate because I could speak 2 languages, but my SAT scores were horrible. My ACT scores were like okay, and my application, I think, really put it over the top. But I think what's really important is if there's a school that you think you're going to be a perfect fit for, or that you're really interested in, and the numbers don't really add up, I want to encourage you that if you have the money to apply, that you should apply. Because you can ask anyone around you when I was in high school. I was not supposed to get into Stanford. There were kids at my high school who were pissed off that I got in, and they didn't get in because they were like the top 5 in the class, and I was somewhere in like 50s or 60s. But getting into a school like that made getting into NYU, made me confident, right? Because if I could get into Stanford, I knew that I could get into NYU. And if I could go to both Stanford and NYU, I knew that I was going to be able to get into a graduate program somewhere. So I really, really want to push you to be, you want to be realistic about the rigor and about the competitiveness of your program, but you don't want to let that keep you from kind of reaching outside of what you think is possible. Because if I had done that, I probably never would have gone away to school. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers we have is this lack of confidence. So think about that more than you think about, oh, there's like a 7% acceptance rate at this school, or there's a 50% acceptance rate at this school, so I'm going to apply only here because my chances are better. Don't sell yourself short. That's probably the worst thing you can do for yourself as a scholar. If you want to go to a school on the continent for graduate school, then go to a school on the continent and make it work, apply, and think also when you have some of those weaknesses like test scores, or maybe you didn't take all the hardest classes, really do think about your letters of recommendation. Get a wide variety of people. You want professors, but you also want people who know you really well, mentors. Sometimes TAs, even though they don't have as much weight as a professor would, write really good letters because they know your work better than some of your professors do. So think about making a full package application, and then just see what happens. Throw it out there with a prayer and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cross your fingers. That's what I did. Please, please, please.
Like Jamaica, I don't know how competitive my program is for admissions process. I consider myself very blessed. I was very adamant about going to school in Hawaii for my undergrad. I wanted to get out of the snow. So I did. I applied to UH Hilo, UH Manoa. I got into both. My ACT scores, I think back then it was like out of 32, the scores were. I scored like about a 23 or something like that, and that's like, yeah, it's good. But my mom was like, oh, that's really great. So I was like, yeah, but not when everybody else in your class is scoring 29s. So I'm like, I mean, I feel dumb. So, you know, don't let the scores keep you down. Don't let them hold you back. And then I knew I wanted to stay in Hawaii for my graduate studies. Actually, no, I lied. I was scared out of my mind when I was going to graduate my bachelor's because I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, oh my God, I got to work. You know, like after high school, like, okay, go to college. But then they don't tell you what comes after your bachelor's, so it's kind of like, oh my God, what do I do? And so I ended up falling into the master's program. Again, like I don't know how competitive it is to get into the School of Social Work. I didn't have to take the GRE, which thank you God, because I don't like the tests. But they practice the concept. So you're scholar practitioners. In a lot of the courses, or in a lot of the programs where you don't have to take the GRE, plan on applying the concepts in some fashion that you're learning in school. Okay, and so when I went to my doctorate program, again, I didn't have to take the GRE. Actually, it was a toss-up. I wanted to come here at Manoa because I work for RCWH, so I figured I could get like some sort of tuition waiver. But they need the GRE, right? And I had a little argument with one of the staff members because I was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the GRE is to showcase whether or not someone would be successful in a graduate level program, right? And they're like, yeah, that's correct. Like, well, I have my master's. Doesn't that say that I'm successful? It's like, we need the GRE. I was like, oh, okay. Never mind. So I ended up going to Walden University, and I think the most difficult part about the admissions process for me in both my master's and my doctorate is that I knew I was going to go, I didn't know when I wanted to go. And I lucked out in my doctorate program because I decided in August, September, that I wanted to go get my doctorate.